Welcome back to the Valor Flight Crew Podcast, hosted by Echo and brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and Vertical Valor Magazine. Today, the keys have been temporarily handed over. In this special takeover episode, Jon Gray and Jack Schonely from the Hangar Z Podcast step into the cockpit for a fun, reflective, and forward-looking conversation as we mark 1 full year of the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. From the moments that defined our first year to the conversations that challenged, inspired, and connected our community, this episode is all about where we've been and where we're headed next. Listen to this 2-part episode as Jon and Jack take us hostage and dive into what's on the horizon for the podcast, what we're most excited about moving forward, and how emerging technology and innovation are shaping the future of public safety and air medical operations. It's a relaxed, behind-the-scenes look at the mission, the momentum, and the ideas driving this industry forward. So strap in and celebrate this journey with us as we hover into the next phase of the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. The takeover starts now. Thank you to our sponsors, Airbus, Metro Aviation, Precision Aviation Group.
Welcome to the Valor Flight Crew Podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and Vertical Valor Magazine. Produced in partnership with Echo, Every Coast Helicopter Operations. The Valor Flight Crew Podcast promotes the personnel and life-saving equipment behind helicopter air ambulance services. Join hosts Mike Fideli and Blake Schreider for in-depth interviews and expert insights from air medical personnel, pilots, communication specialists, and maintenance crews who play critical roles in airborne emergency response.
Line 1 accepting.
Copy, line 1, gotcha, accepting. You're going to be talking to Red Feather 1 on LCEMS.
Welcome to the Valor Flight Crew Podcast, hosted by Echo and brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and Vertical Valor Magazine. I'm your host today, Jack Schonely, and with me is the creator of the Hangar Z Podcast, Jon Gray. Hi,
Hey.
Jon.
Commander, we have stolen the platform from the VSP guys. This is awesome.
Yeah, we've got him handcuffed in the back, and we're going to release him to talk to us. What's really happening here is we're going to have a turn the tables a little bit on Mike and Blake, who are both with us, and have a conversation about what's been going on with the Valor Flight Crew Podcast and what the future looks like. And so it's a great idea, Jon. You kind of created this idea, and we're going to run with it.
Yeah, so 2025 was the official launch year of the Valor Flight Crew Podcast, and it's part of the larger Vertical Helicast platform. So, the Vertical Helicast podcast platform is something that's near and dear to my heart. We've been able to build that in conjunction with Vertical and Vertical Valor Magazine. Mike and Linda Reno, had the vision and idea to create this, and it's been really cool to execute these ideas. So, early on the Hangar Z Podcast, our goal was to cover pretty much all of public safety aviation, and we did, and we still do. So a lot of conversations were had with folks in the HEMS community, or the helicopter air ambulance. I can't say how still, it's weird. The helicopter air ambulance community, and really love the stories. There's so many positive stories that come out of that community. So those were great. But as we had these conversations, I realized, there's so many great conversations, and there's such a need for a dedicated channel and dedicated voice to promote what's happening in this industry. We really wanted to create its own channel, and you guys stepped up. I think about the first Echo conference that I went to, me and Jeff Rakovich in Austin. And that's where I met you guys, and we eventually came up with this concept, like, hey, let's join forces, and you guys can essentially promote the community through this podcast, and it's been really cool. So that's our goal today is really to reflect on 2025, some of the really interesting conversations and things that have come up for Mike and Blake as they've had the different conversations from the helicopter air ambulance community. And Jack, you were a part of one of those conversations. What was your takeaway from your guys' conversation?
It was great. That was one of my favorite conversations I've ever had. I mean that, because it just was, it's a topic that we talk about, but I don't get to dive into very often. And Mike and Blake, man, you guys were great. I mean, you took us down the right paths, and your follow-ups on the questions were great. And it just led to a very, I believe, valuable conversation that I learned from. Hopefully you guys got something out of it, and your listeners benefited in the end. And great experience. I appreciated the invitation, and and I had a lot of fun. So Mike and Blake, you guys are doing great work with this. You've come a
Thank
long way. We look back, I'm sure that you guys do too. Jon and I talk about this all the time, where we look back on episodes, 100, 200. Jon's been doing this for 5 years.
Wow.
And looking back and watching or listening to yourself, and you just go, wow, we've come a long way, because we're always learning and getting better. And you guys have done a lot in a year. I mean, in that category, it's like night and day. And I'm sure you feel that.
Oh yeah.
It certainly
sure.
shows.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. I'll be listening to you guys, and one of your guests will start talking about something, and I'm thinking in my mind, if I'm hosting this, I would ask this particular question or something similar. Then all of a sudden, one of you two come up with that exact thing. I'm like, wow, these guys they're doing really good. So kudos to you and the community that has been featured in the podcast. All super interesting. I know there's a lot of feedback that's come in highlighting, how much those conversations have benefited the community already. One thing I want to talk about briefly before we kind of get into a year in review with you is Jack introducing the podcast. I think a new change for the Vertical Helicast platform is Jack is now the lead host for the Hangar Z podcast, which is really cool. Jack is, as I'd refer to, a giant in the industry. I remember reaching out to Jack early on in the Hangar Z podcast history, I guess I should say, and asked him to come on as a guest. And I was kind of scared. I was like, I don't want this guy who I think's giant in the industry to be like, oh, my story.
It's truly terrifying.
But he's like, yeah. So, since that time, he's become a close friend, and now he's kind of stepping up to take over the lead host role in the Hangar Z podcast. It's really weird for me kind of to take a step back and focus on some broader strategy stuff for the Helicast platform as a whole, and then taking over the VMRO conference education direction. So kind of establishing what's going to be at that conference, and just a really cool blessing to be able to do that. But that wouldn't have been possible had I not gotten some experience with Echo, and what's happening in the Echo conferences. This last year got to take a role in identifying the education and programming for the law enforcement side at the Echo conference. And Jack and Clay came in and spoke there. And I think by having Jack on the podcast this year on VFC, it highlights what Echo is all about. It's about the cross-pollination, the learning that takes place when you bring everybody under one roof instead of kind of siloing the different areas. So I thought Jack's conversation on the podcast was really cool. Again, then it highlighted how there's something to learn from each segment. And then if we lower those barriers and really make an effort to learn from the different disciplines, it really benefits the community as a whole, So yeah, so I've been rambling for a while, but thanks, Jack, for walking us in. Thanks for taking over the lead role in the Hangar Z podcast.
I'm honored, and I won't let you down. And I hopefully, taking the lead here won't result in our listener and viewership going down to 2, just my dad and my dog. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. My dad will always watch, Jon. So we got that going for us.
We got one listener. Yeah, hopefully we're not the VFC was doing really good until Jon and Jack came on.
Don't ruin this for us, guys. We're counting on you.
Well, I kind of like to start reflecting on your guys' experience. Talk about the early conception of the idea, the pitch that came your guys' way, and what your early thoughts were as it relates to, I don't know if I want to do this, and to where you are now. And Mike, let's start with you. But I know you've got some interesting thoughts there.
Yeah, no, I do. It's been a crazy ride. I never, if you would have talked to me, 5 years ago, I never would have thought that I'd be sitting here in this seat right now. It's been a really crazy experience. And I got to meet you, Jon, the first time down at Austin, and we did a little recording together then and talked about FAST, as I was a lot more heavily involved with FAST at that point in time. And I'll be the first to admit I was as nervous as hell. Mm-hmm. It was a brand new experience sitting there with the microphones in front of your face and all the stuff going on around you and having to filter out all this background noise and record this podcast. And I was like, man, I'm going to sound like a total idiot on this thing. And I was, fumbling over words, and it was just kind of, it was a very different experience. And I left that feeling like this, it was pretty cool, but I was like, that's never something I could do. Right. And, so when this concept came to be, and Vertical has been very supportive of Echo throughout this entire process and coming to the conferences, and this concept started to roll out, and I was still part of the board at that point in time. And I thought, this is an awesome experience. This is something that, can be a great relationship building, as well as a way to be able to reach our membership on a much larger level, and not just at the conference, but throughout the entire year.
Yep.
I thought that was such a cool concept to be able to do that. Never once in a million years thought that, again, I'd be sitting in this seat right here.
Yeah.
And they were looking for people, to be part of the podcast. And I never put my name in the hat. I never thought that I'd be someone that would be good for sitting here, but never really initially wanted to do it. And, multiple people came back and they're like, we really think that you should do the podcast. I don't know about that. And after the third or fourth time they came to me, I was like, all right, fine, but I'm giving up some other responsibilities. But this past year, man, this has been just an awesome experience. It really has. I mean, just the opportunity to get to speak with some of the people in the industry that are doing such amazing things, and really focus heavy on all the important stuff that we don't get to talk about on a daily basis, mental health focus, the safety focus, and getting to talk with some just absolutely amazing people in the industry that are doing some phenomenal things. It has been just one of those experiences that I'm truly grateful for now after looking back and reflecting, but it's just been something that's been so cool. And it's a lot of work. It is a lot of background stuff that has to happen, even pre-production and post-production.
Yeah.
But it has been such a cool experience, and I'm grateful for all of you guys. Jon, you've been such a huge help through this entire process. And just the warm welcome that we've had from MHM and the Vertical family. It's just been a phenomenal experience overall.
Yeah, that first Austin experience was really cool for me. I hadn't experienced a Echo conference prior to that, and I was blown away by the hospitality and just kind of, Jack, what you experienced in this first year.
Yeah.
I will say, I think, Mike, you had something to do with the dog that recorded on the Hangar Z podcast at some point with the SR3 guys.
Maybe.
So we walk out, Jeff and I walk out. I think we'd gone to see Clay or maybe Terry Mauchi speak, and we walk out of this conference room. Shame on us for leaving our equipment unattended. I think that's something you learn in the police academy on day one. Don't ever leave your equipment unattended. And we did. We walk out and there's a whole group of people standing around the Hangar Z booth. I'm like, that's weird. But at that point, there's nothing that really looks suspicious, because that's kind of always the case. Everyone's always kind of hanging out there. About 30 minutes later, all of a sudden, this social media thing pops up, and it's the SR3 guys and a bunch of people. I'm like, I'm pretty sure you were a part of that. And there's a dog sitting in our chair with a headset on the dog's head.
I don't know if I can take credit for that, but I wish I could.
It was funny. So we met one of the flight nurses this last year at Echo, whose dog was the one that was on the podcast.
That's right. That's right. We talked to her for a little bit. That was funny.
Yeah, it was funny. But yeah, it's been an honor. And to your point, it's one of those things when you say 5 years ago, I would have never imagined sitting in the seat. And I'm the exact same way. This is just not my personality, and never envisioned it. So Blake, for you, is it something that you ever thought you would be a part of? I know you've done a little bit of this with your normal 9-to-5 job, but talk about that a little bit.
I think I'm the same way. I would have never pictured me doing this either. When I go back and listen to the first few episodes, like how like when you're a kid and your parents like videotape, you doing like the sporting events and you're like super awkward, and then you watch it like years later, you're like, man, did it really sound like that, or did I really do that? Like, I really felt that way like the first few, because we've done a few podcasts for my daily job, and we've just tried to highlight small topics, things within our agency. And then when this was brought up and Mike brought this forward from you guys, I was like, yeah, that's no problem, and then the magnitude that it reaches, and I think the discussions that we've had and just the overall feedback and how we're able to reach the guests and everybody doing this job across the country and having these same thoughts and all that feedback. I would have never imagined in a million years that I would have the privilege to, sit here and be part of something like this. So I'm truly honored. It's been such an amazing ride. I've learned a whole heck of a lot. It's definitely a lot of work in more ways than one. And I think we could all agree on that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I feel that it's been very impactful for me. And I really love it when people reach out on social media or send us a message. And we've made so many connections, and especially having hosted by Echo, and then with the partnership with Vertical Valor Magazine, MHM, everybody pushing that forward. It is such a large scale. This is more than, the things we talk about at my day-to-day job in between 250 people, 300 people. It's definitely reached a larger scale. So I think it's been an amazing ride.
Yeah, you talk about the amount of work that goes into the podcast. I had no idea either. I think, I'll go back to before the podcast.
Yep.
I remember wanting to go to aviation when I was a police officer. And my initial thought was like, well, how hard could it be? I'm just going to go fly around in a helicopter. Well, little did I know. In the same way, when I first started thinking through a podcast, I'm like, well, how hard could it be? Just get on and talk. No. Oh, no. There's, there's particular conversations that we've had where, maybe the guest has written a book, and I want to spend the time to read the book before I interview the person. And so then it turns into, I'm not real smart, so it takes me about a month to read a book sometimes. So we literally spending, sometimes months preparing and planning to interview somebody. Yeah. And then you've got, Rob and David on the back end in the post-production side who make this just sound flawless and execute the work in such a great way. You listen to podcasts, and for me as a podcast consumer, if the audio is bad, I'm not going to listen. I've heard some really good professional podcasters or people that I want to listen to, but the audio is so bad, just like, I can't even listen to it.
Yep.
So it's wild. When you think through, you talk about feedback, Blake, then I'll start with you here. Feedback is one of the things that Jack and I talk about a lot. We get a lot of really positive feedback, and the things that we hear and the impact that the podcasts make in the industry is things that, gosh, I would never even thought would be possible. When you think back over the course of the year, are you guys starting to hear some of that feedback and hear interesting stories and ways in which the podcast has influenced somebody or influenced training or policy or anything like that within the community?
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
There's so many stories and so many guests that we've, talked to. And when you get that feedback from the listeners, and to me, that's what it's all about. For us in either law enforcement or healthcare field, you're out there to help people, right? And we always say that if I could help one person, I've done my job. And I've kind of almost assumed that same type of mantra role within, doing this podcast. And I think Mike and I are right on the same page when we're discussing these topics and we bring, the guests on. There's so many other people and our listeners that can relate to maybe particularly that very story. And, especially the ones with mental health and leadership, because I think a lot of us are, when you're listening to podcasts or you're doing the extra things, like a lot of times you're that person that's the go-getter. Like you want more, you want to consume more, you want to do your best. And then you make that connection and you hear someone that you've never met before, but you hear them and you're like, man, I was thinking the exact same thing. Like, I wish we did something like that. And then when you hear the feedback from someone, they'll send you an email right in and say, hey, this group of people that you interviewed were amazing. And then we'll hear firsthand experience. For example, the Boston MedFlight podcast, we had somebody write in, such great feedback, and just echoed, what an amazing program and how everybody was so nice. They had taken care of a friend of theirs, and it was just so amazing to hear that. And I think that to me is what helps drive to continue to bring this content and these discussions forward, because we're it is making an impact, especially when you get that feedback. You know you're reaching people in the right ways.
Yeah, super impactful. Would you say that's the most? I used the word impactful already, but is that the most impactful review or feedback you've gotten that Boston Med flight?
Yeah, I think so to date, as far as feedback goes, for sure. I think the other one that we had too was the pilot's perspective, hearing, what pilots are looking for. I got some good feedback just from casually from friends, like, man, that was great. I really wanted to hear what other pilots are thinking. And even some of my pilot friends were like, that was phenomenal to hear. So I think that was another really great episode that brought in that feedback and kind of completed that circle,
Yeah. Yeah. I think what you guys are doing is really cool. It's focused not just on one part of, like, let's say the medical part of HAA. It's the whole thing, right? Pilots, maintainers, mental health side, all the things that go into that community. I think you guys focus on, which is really cool. Mike, for you, when you think back through the feedback that you've received over the last year, whether it was somebody who wrote in or somebody you had a conversation with or whatever, is there some feedback that was impactful to you?
Yeah, I think, when you start this whole process, I don't think you realize like the gravity of the conversations you're having and how it actually hits people in different ways. And I think one of the biggest pieces of feedback that I've valued is, and it's been through like random messages on Instagram, it's been through Facebook, it's been through at the conference, and somebody just randomly coming up to me and being like, I love listening to the podcast and the content that you guys are bringing. But I think it's about that in every single one of the episodes we've done, there's that connection. Like you can put yourself in that situation. You can understand, multiple sides of the story, and you can have just a little bit better awareness of what's happening in some other place of the country, and how somebody else is doing this process or tackling this problem. And I think that everybody, while we each wear different flight suits and we fly in different helicopters, we're still doing the same job. We still have the same issues. We still have the same challenges. We still have the same things that we're striving and working towards. And I think in every single one of the podcasts that we've done, it's really just been about the connection, right? And I think that's what people enjoy so much. And it's an easy listen too. But I've gotten, it's not one of those, there's so many of the educational podcasts out there. And I think that they do a great job at what they do. But if you're driving in the car and you happen to be driving along and oh shoot, I got to get to my exit, and you stop listening for a second or two, you're not missing a critical piece of information that you have to go back and re-listen to everything again. It's an easy listening and something that can then pass the time for a lot of people. But the feedback that I've gotten has just been that they enjoy the community, they enjoy the connection, and they enjoy the fact that we're, trying to bring the entire community together. Just like you had mentioned, it's not just focusing on med crew, it's trying to bridge those gaps and really have that communication across all disciplines within the industry. And I've learned a ton, doing that. And it's interesting to me to hear that, the listeners are very much enjoying that same aspect of it, and that it is connecting with them on that level.
Yeah, the connectivity part of it, it's interesting. Our community is small as as a whole, but once you start connecting the dots and realizing how truly small it is because of the conversations you're having, it's wild. Internationally, even you go international and you start running into folks, and it really just feels like it does connect the community. Jack, for you, and this goes outside of VFC, but it speaks to the impact that we've had on the platform. And each podcast, I think, has its own unique audience and its own unique impact. But what's the most impactful feedback you've received as a host?
That's a hard one, because I'm with Mike and Blake on this. It's what kind of keeps us going. And, it doesn't, there are some feedbacks that floor you and just go, oh my gosh. But it's even the little ones that just say, man, keep doing the great job, from people that you didn't expect to hear that from.
Yeah.
I mean, sure. I've had people come up and say, oh man, I really liked this particular episode. And I'm thinking, I can't believe this person even listens to the podcast. They're not in aviation. They're retired. But they come up and tell you that was fantastic. Yeah. I go, well, what did you like about that? I mean, what? And they go, oh, it was just interesting. And it's neat to hear what other people are doing in their careers and blah, blah. Those are the ones that really, really kind of grab you. But
Yep.
but probably the biggest ones are, and Jon knows what I'm talking about. And I'm not going to get into detail about it because it's very personal to this person, but there was a life-changing feedback that we got where someone listened to, and I'll tell you the episodes that they were talking about, is Jimmy Hatch and Alan Mack and Tanya Glenn, the mental wellness stuff. And they reached out and told us about their situation and how those episodes impacted them to take action. I'll just leave it at that. And that person is better off today than they were prior to listening to those episodes. And Jon and I mean, when I got the phone call about that, Jon came to my hotel room and I had just talked to this person and I answered the door and there was tears rolling down my face. And Jon's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "There's nothing wrong. Oh my gosh, where do you hear this?" He couldn't believe it. And then we're both sitting there going, wow, this podcast is more than we even imagined. Yeah. So I can imagine, I can only imagine what kind of feedback you get in your community, about the stories and from different perspectives that really shock you sometimes probably and go, wow, I can't believe that the person even shared that with us, but they did. And I think you would agree that it keeps you going. Yeah. It really keeps you going. Blake and Mike both, do you find that? I mean, is it like a shot of adrenaline where you go, yeah, we got to keep doing this? I mean, do you find that happening to yourselves?
Oh, absolutely. Someone the other day, can I give a shout out? Callie Compton, Future Flight Crew alumni. She had a screenshot of like the most minutes listened to of the Valor Flight Crew podcast. It was like 1,100,
top 2%.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. Cool. And that makes it worth it. Yeah. And you 100%. See like, man, someone's listening to me. Like, but it's all of us, and it's like you said, Jack, it's when you have these topics and these discussions and people hear that and like Mike said, like you can relate to that, and we all can bring something to the table. Like whether you're first few months into flying or you've been doing this for years, there's so many things that we can learn from each other. And I think that's what helps keep me going, because that's really the whole like mission behind Echo, right, is to bring everybody together so we can be safer and build this community to be the absolute best. And that's, I mean, no offense, that's why, this is a really sought after field, doing air medical and just same thing like in law enforcement, right? There's probably a lot of guys that want to get into aviation, not a lot of spots and probably limited for the amount of times that spots come available. So I think that when we get those feedbacks, that's huge for me. That's what keeps me going.
I think it's that whole imposter syndrome, right? Like,
yeah,
I'm sitting here in my home office, recording a podcast, and it floors me that this is literally going out all over, the world, across the US, but across the world. And like the impact that it can have. I mean, we've done an international episode or two. We're hoping to do another one. Like these are things that are going to reach much further than my agency, my state, and just the US. And like that part of it floors me. And it's such a cool experience to be part of that and to have a voice for the industry and hopefully bring to light, some of these different topics that we're facing as challenges in the industry, and how do we accomplish these things together. But it's so cool to really just be in that moment. And we're sitting here recording this and it doesn't feel like it's, this grand thing. It's the four of us sitting around, having some coffee, shooting the shit a little bit and just enjoying the conversation. And you just don't realize what that reach actually is. And that's been so cool. And hearing from our listeners and knowing that there's topics that we're discussing that are resonating with them, and, getting suggestions from our listeners. Hey, we'd love to hear more about X, Y, or Z. Like it really just reinvigorates each time. And it's been such a cool experience, like having that feedback and that connection with our listeners, especially going to the last Echo conference. I mean, it's been the first time that we've had a conference since the podcast has gone live, and just that interaction with people who are listening. And I'm like, there's nobody here that's really listening to this thing. And like,
There's so many people. that came up
multiple
to-
people that come up.
Oh,
to
I
me.
know.
And I'm like, this is freaking cool. Like
Yeah.
being able to have these discussions and know that it is impacting people in that way, and to get that feedback from people, it's phenomenal. I love it.
I'm curious about something that happens to Jon and I, and see if it's already happened to you guys, where you get feedback from someone who was not in the industry. They were, a nurse, or they were a pilot someplace else, and now they listen to your podcast, and it helped them prepare to get into HAA, and now they did it, and they give you some credit for that. We get that a lot, and it's one of the neatest things for us. We talk about it all the time. Has that happened to you guys?
I don't know if that's happened to me yet. I've heard some feedback from people that are not in the industry in very good ways. They're like, I really loved your conversation on mental health. I really loved your conversation on, leadership and having a voice in your industry. And so I think that there are a lot of concepts that can relate to somebody that maybe is not an HAA, but not that it's been like a life-changing thing for them yet. So maybe someday.
That's going to happen eventually. I mean, you're still in the opening stages, really.
Sure.
It's a year.
Very much
but
so.
you watch, that's going to happen. We get those regularly, and not just messages, but at AppsCon and at VAI, where people come up to us and say, hey, I just got this tactical flight officer job, and I wanted to thank you because you're the reason I got that. I was able to listen to episodes that helped me prepare for an interview, helped me prepare mentally, helped me prepare job-wise by doing the right things, that you guys had guests that they suggested this. Man, we love that. And some of them are over the top, where they say, you guys, Jon and Jack are the reason, I got this job. And we're humbled by it, but it's really exciting,
Yeah, people literally moving across the country to work for an agency
to take the job. Yeah.
because you had them on podcast. It is humbling. You brought up the conference, and I think one of my early motivations for the Hangar Z podcast was, you go to a conference and you hear some really impactful people get up and speak, industry leaders get up, and their voices and their words really resonate with you. And it's impactful until you forget 2 months later that the words that they've spoken, because right? Life happens and those voices kind of disappear. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool to have a platform where those people could come and kind of encourage folks in our community throughout the year? So my early idea for the Hangar Z podcast was to promote folks that are currently in the industry, to honor the folks that have retired from industry, the giants that have put us where we are, and then to encourage the next generation and continue the conversations that come out of the conference. But as we've talked about, the overall, I guess, I don't want to say goal, but mission of the podcast has grown so much broader than that. And I think today, if you ask me, and Jack, you probably agree, leadership and mental health are two of the things that we like to highlight the most. It's become a big part of our mission.
Yes.
That wasn't the early part or focus of the podcast, but it's become that.
And it's become that for a lot of reasons, huh, Jon? I mean, and one of the reasons is that, once you get a guest on about mental wellness, for instance, then you realize, wow, this is more prevalent in our world than maybe we even realized.
Yeah.
And then we get some feedback and we go, oh, we have to run with this more often, because people, this is happening across the board, not just in law enforcement aviation, not just in the military, not just in, a particular segment of society. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It just is more prevalent in the public safety arena for obvious reasons. We see things and do things that the average human does not prepare for.
Right.
So that is how it's changed. And now, like Jon said, I mean, those two topics, every chance we get, we're going to jump on those, because they cross all barriers. You can apply them to business. I mean, you can apply them to any occupation, really, because it exists. But public safety, wow. I mean, leadership and mental wellness, geez, two huge topics that need to be discussed as often as possible.
Yeah, on the leadership side, initially I'm like, oh, I just thought my agency was the one that had problems with leadership, and then talking to people worldwide, and you're like, holy cow, this is an issue everywhere,
It is. The same complaints too. I mean, identical complaints. Well, what don't you like about your leader, Jon? And you say, well, I don't like this, this, and this. And the guy in the Netherlands says, oh yeah, we're having that problem too. And the guy in Australia says, yeah, that's exactly what our leadership problem is. And you go, wow, this isn't just in Ontario. This isn't just in Los Angeles. Wow. It's in Sydney. It's in Amsterdam. It's in New York. It's in Miami. It's everywhere. And that's a fact.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
But I think we're on the cusp of so many things in this industry changing, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's part of where all of this kind of culminates from, in that community sense that, yes, we're all facing the same challenges. Yes, we all have the same goals where we want to be, but this is where we're at. And how do we make that change? And I think that's been the cool part, is being able to have those conversations, because these are things that need to be discussed. Well, and we do need to bring light to it. This has always been an industry where we've had to keep things, closed off, sheltered in, not discuss stuff. And now this is an opportunity to bring that to light. This is an opportunity to really have an impact on the conversations that are being had across the entire country and globe, and really start to be a voice for those people that maybe don't have one on an everyday basis. And that is truly an honor to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, like I mentioned, the feedback has kind of allowed us to refocus a bit, or recage kind of some of the missions that we have. So when you guys think through your early mindset, the early inception of the Valor Flight Crew podcast, and what you thought it was going to be, where did you start, and where are you today? Is it the same place, or are you somewhere different as far as what's starting to take shape as the mission and focus of what the conversations are?
Man, that's a tough one. I think we've covered so many topics. Like it's been crazy looking back on this past year, and all the different conversations that we've had. I think we've covered so many topics in the industry, and there's been quite a few of them that we do want to revisit again. So I think while we've kind of had this overarching umbrella for the past year and just trying to talk to so many different people within the industry, that this next year may be an opportunity to kind of focus in on some of those other things. For me personally, I definitely want to, focus in on like the mental health side of things. And I want to focus in on the highlights of some of the amazing things that people are doing across the industry. I think that it's been kind of cool to just kind of touch on those topics a little bit and kind of get a little taste. But now that we've gotten some feedback on some of those things, I think that for me, that's where I've heard the most impact from our listeners is being able to dive into some of those things a little bit further.
I think the longer you go, the more that stuff kind of comes into focus, so it'll be interesting as you have more and more guests come on that talk about a certain thing. You're drawn to continue talking about that because of the impact it has in the community. Blake, for you, any thoughts on that in particular?
I think from where we started, our biggest focus was to not be that specific educational type platform or voice, but it was to really try to touch a lot of different areas of the air medical side. And the thing that I liked and still do was hearing from the different sides of the house. So not just hearing from other nurses and medics, or some of the things that we've done. I think that there was a few episodes where we were able to chat with the guests that have like a multi-mission role, not only air medical, but they kind of also bridge into law enforcement and search rescue. I think those are really cool because there was feedback where people were like, man, I can be a flight nurse or medic and, kind of ride along with the police, that exists. And I also really loved bringing on when we talked to the dispatcher, our communication specialists, and the maintenance side of the house. I think really also highlighted the other working areas in what we do. Because for me, we just take it for granted. We go out, get in the helicopter, and we're like, yeah, it's cool. It's maintained. It's good. They'll let us know if there's anything that has to be done, right? And I am fully confident if someone requests a helicopter, I will hear about it. And so, but we just go about our days, but I really loved hearing the impact that the other people that are, behind the scenes, to hear their voice and how much their job means to them, to know that the people that are taking care of patients, like their job is to take care of the machine and take care of the people that are taking care of the people that need help. And I feel like that was also a really good highlight, that when I think back, that was a really cool thing that we were able to bring. And, we touched so many topics, I think, in this past year for all the things that we do. And like Mike said, the leadership and mental health, I think that I don't know of many episodes that there wasn't a tie-in to at least one or both of those topics, which is every day.
The flight operations side of things is the pointy tip of the spear, right? And you look at all the operations that happen behind the scenes to make each mission possible. The conversation you had with Faith Ortega, man, what an insightful episode, right? Like that's the stuff that most people don't even think about, and that's with the launch of the Vertical MRO conference this year, focusing on maintenance, who you brought up unsung heroes. And those folks, they put in hard work, blood, tears, sweat to make all these missions possible. The whole mantra of the conference is no maintenance, no mission, and that's 100% true. So I love what you guys are doing by kind of involving the whole ecosystem that surrounds the flight operations side. Jack, as you've listened through their podcast this year, what's kind of struck you as unique or something that you've benefited from?
I would say kind of what Blake and Mike were just touching on, the wide variety of guests. It isn't just, the medic nurse side. It isn't just the pilot side. It isn't just this. It's such a wide variety of different people, all in that same really small community that have huge impacts in their own way, and they highlight it. And I like that a lot. I mean, we talk about it all the time, how it's important to expand our audience by expanding the types of guests we bring on. And you've done that in your opening episodes. You have done that. And I think that's really valuable. It keeps interest, and it brings in new people that might not have listened, and they listen because, they're going to have the maintenance side of things, or they're going to have a dispatch. That was really smart. Dispatch is a huge part of your industry, of ours as well. And, getting that perspective out there is a really smart idea. So I think that really was really something that jumped out at me. It wasn't just a certain small, narrow niche. It was a wide variety of people.
I think, when you talk about a lot of those things, like obviously the bridging of the communication was a huge piece of this puzzle that we tried to tackle. And I hope that we can do a lot more of that in the upcoming years. But I think that we get pigeonholed so often into talking about what's wrong in the industry, and we forget about what's right in the industry.
That's good.
And I think that that's where a big focus has been, is being able to highlight some of these things that are happening across the country and across the globe in what honestly is the best job in the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a way to reinvigorate people. I think that is a way to really promote some of these amazing things, and for us to maybe look at it in a different way, as to not what are we doing wrong, but how do we capitalize on what we're doing right.
Yeah.
And I think that's been a really cool experience to highlight all of these different people and processes and the things that are happening in the industry. Like, I can't wait to hear more stories like that, because I feel like those are so impactful for me. I think it's so easy for us to get into this, oh man, I got to go to work today. Like, we forget like how amazing of a job this is. And there's some days where I'm like, man, I am just not feeling it. Like, this is not what I want to do. But like, having these conversations with these people that are so passionate about what they do and that are making such amazing advancements in the industry and within their companies and affecting literally things on a global perspective, like that makes me like, that gives me that passion again. That makes me feel like, all right, like this really is like, it reminds me why I got into this in the first place. And I think, you know, it helps with my attitude adjustment every now and then.
Absolutely. I remember having ride-alongs, and a lot of folks didn't like having ride-alongs, but I always loved it, especially in aviation. Because what you said is 100% true. Sometimes you get caught in the minutia of the political things that are happening at work, or just the day in, day out burdens that you deal with, and you forget how absolutely amazing what you're doing is. But you look in the back seat to the person who's on their first flight, you know, and they've got this huge grin on their face, and you talk to them afterwards, like, this is the greatest job ever. How do you do this? And it's a reminder, like you said, that 100%. This is absolutely amazing. And I do want to touch on what you said, and I love that you brought up essentially the story of hope. You know, and our goal is to promote the positive things that are happening in the industry. You know, we did talk about some of the I'll call it the downsides, you know, some of the failures of leadership and some of the failures in the addressing of mental health, but not in a negative way. I think we try and approach it from a positive perspective as much as we can. But I think, you know, the one emotion, the only emotion that's more powerful than fear is hope. And I think by having these conversations, bringing folks on who've been in the mud and found their way out is inspiring and provides hope for people. Yeah. So I think the more hope we can instill and promote in not just our industry, but aviation in general and then beyond is great. You know, Clint Pulver is one of my favorite people on the face of the earth. And I always mess up everybody's sayings, including Jack's. So I'll just, Clint, I'm going to mess this up.
I have sayings.
But he said something to the effect of, nobody wants to follow a pessimist, you know, and I think that's true. So the message and story of hope that you guys are spreading through the sharing of the positivity that exists within your segment of the aviation community is great. But kudos to you guys for that.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
Yeah, and you can do it, and you guys have done it, and I think we're doing it. We're like you said, Mike, you don't want to dwell on what we're doing wrong. You want to dwell on what we're doing right. So you bring on people that are doing it right, and without even talking about the people that are doing it wrong, you highlight and showcase a leader. I mean, a leader that you would love to work for, or you showcase Tanya Glenn, a doctor, and you're not talking about how screwed up all these mental wellness programs are and in lots of departments. No, you show them what it could be, and through the guests, and the people walk away and go, wow, like Jon said, there's hope. If they can do it, I can do it. That leader from that department is amazing. We could have leaders like that. They just have to adjust a little bit. Clint Pulver, great example. He's basically talks about leadership and management and from a private sector point of view, but it's not. It's across the board. That was one of the most surprising episodes for me, where Jon said, hey, I got a guy, Clint Pulver. I go, who's Clint Pulver? You know? And then I read his book and go, ooh. And then we have him on and we go, wow, he inspired us. And we knew what that would do to the listener, because he connected all of his experience, knowledge, and his way of communicating into our industry. And he did it seamlessly. How do you do that? I mean, he does it. And
skill.
So yeah, it is skill. It is
like a natural, like just when people have that and they bring that.
Oh yeah.
And you get that as as you're talking and when you're recording that podcast and you're having that conversation, you just feel that flow and you're like, man, this guy, like this person is just amazing.
Yeah.
And I know if I feel that way, I know it's hitting so many other people in the same level.
That's right. We felt it when we pressed the leave button after Clint Pulver. I don't know which one of us called the other one faster and said, "Wow, what just happened?" You know, it was just incredible, and we were like, "Clint is amazing," and you know, his book was not aimed at law enforcement or aviation. It has an aviation touch because of his background, but it wasn't aimed at our industry, and yet it applied to our industry 100%, not 98. You know, it was incredible. And so that's the kind of guests that I think it's important for us to again, like I said, Mike, you know, I agree with you. You don't want to constantly bash, this is how screwed up we are. No, let's just show people what it can be, you know?
And you think about like the bad is probably, 1 to 2% of what we do on an everyday basis.
Yes.
Right. Mm-hmm. So why are we focusing on that 1 to 2% when we can focus on all of this, 98, 99% of the things we're doing well, and how do we continue to make them better? Yeah. And that's what we're, I think a big part of this is trying to focus on is what are we doing well and how can we continue that in the future?
Yeah. Love that. Fun fact before we close out on Clint, Clint growing up wanted to be a helicopter pilot, and primarily he wanted to be a helicopter air ambulance pilot. Like that was his dream.
Saving lives, right? Saving lives. I want to save lives.
I won't ruin the story because I'd like to have Clint on the Valor Flight Crew podcast as a whole, but through a series of unfortunate events, he couldn't fly as a young man until something happened later in life and allowed him to enjoy the love of flight. So we'll have to coordinate with Clint and have him come on with you guys and talk about his life and the inspiration that he tells and inspires through his story. It's just amazing.
Great story. Story.
We'll add that one to the list.
Yeah.
So this is a hard question. So I'll give you guys the question, and we'll start with Jack. So give you guys time to think about the answer.
Surprise questions.
This is
you're on the spot, Jack.
So. Question that you could ask any podcast host. One, what was the most impactful, or what was maybe a favorite guest? And that's a hard question because every guest that comes on is amazing, right? But there's particular guests that come on, and for whatever the reason is, their perspective, their experience, something impacted you in a way that you hadn't been impacted in a way before. So one, who is that guest that was most impactful in 2025 for you guys? And then were there any unique lessons that you learned as a result of any of the conversations you had? Because so many people come on the podcast and I'm like, man, I hadn't even thought about what you just talked about in a way that you framed that. So Jack, when it comes to you and on the Hangar Z side for 2025, is there any guests that really kind of come top of mind? And not to say that all the guests aren't amazing, because they all are.
They are.
They are what make the podcast possible, and they are what make the community what it is. But is there one particular name that just jumps to the top for some reason?
I'll just go not just for 2025, but for my entire time with you, John, on the Hangar Z, and just say, that's an easy question. Tanya Glenn. I say that all the time because people ask me, hey, where should I start? I've never listened to the Hangar Z. What episode should I start at? And if they're in public safety, I say, 176, 177, Dr. Tanya Glenn. And the reason that's such a simple answer for me is that she makes mental wellness interesting. She makes it real. She takes away the stigma, and she says things in a very, very compassionate and simple way for anyone to understand. And all I say is, I wish I had heard Tanya speak in 1983. Not now, not 24 or 25. No, 1983 is when I needed to hear her. And it's because I didn't know what lied ahead. I mean, I had no idea the things I was going to see and do. And it was just so valuable. When you come across someone that just really wows you.
Yeah.
And again, I could name 25, 30 easy, but that one really still sticks with me. And it's for that reason, it changes people. It will change people. It will help people.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. It's going to help people. And there will be people that listen to those episodes and go, I need to call someone. And they're going to get better. And maybe they're dealing with something and they're going to get better because she makes it so inviting that, hey, there is true, here's this word again, here's hope. There is hope that I'm going to get through what I'm going through. And it doesn't sound very complicated. And you know what? It isn't. After you take that huge step to get help. Once you get help, it's like, what was I waiting for? And that's why I like that so much.
Yeah.
Are there any would all come lessons that you learned or anything that stood out to you as something unique through one of the conversations we had this year?
Well, that's a little bit more difficult to answer because there was so many things. But one that's fresh on my mind because I just rewatched it. It just came out is with Matt Zadunich from San Diego PD. And we talked about it and I brought it up at the end of the podcast again about how Matt's training philosophy, and this will apply to the HAA world, that Matt's training philosophy is that when you're training someone, you train them like they're gonna make it. They're gonna make it through this process. They're brand new. You train them like they're gonna make it, but you document like they're not gonna make it. And you do that for every single applicant. That is so simple and so accurate. And it doesn't matter the industry you're in. You know, there's always new people. Some are not going to cut. They're not going to make the cut.
Yeah.
And others thrive. I mean, and everything in between. But I thought that simple phrase really hit me extra this year. It stuck out to me.
Funny because I just finished listening to that this morning.
Yeah.
In the gym, and I thought you might say that because I hadn't heard it framed like that either. There's a saying in sports, something to the same effect. And again, I always mess these up, so this is my version of that. It's practice like you've never won and play like you've never lost.
Yes.
You know, it's that
very similar.
That kind of mindset.
Yep.
Mike, for you, when you think through that, what comes to mind?
I think some of the most, impactful ones or interesting ones from the past year are probably, I would have to narrow it down to two, with Rhett Drain and Danica Mainridge, and talking about their experiences. And obviously both of those incorporated a crash, but it wasn't focused on the crash itself. It was focused on their journey through that process and their resiliency. And like thinking about those stories, it still gives me chills to be able, like, I can't even imagine being in their shoes in that situation and what they had to deal with, and what their crews had to deal with. And I hope that I never have to be, firsthand knowledge of that situation. But their story just truly still sends chills through me. But what was so impactful to me is how they persevered through all of it, how they were able to turn the corner and, still be in the industry, go to work every day, get back in that helicopter and know that they're making an impact and a difference. And their story of that is what was so impressive on my end.
Yeah, Rhett's story is super impactful. Talk about getting chills, right? Listening to him talk, you're like, holy cow,
100%.
Blake, for you?
Well, those two right off the bat were, I'm in that same boat with Mike, talking to Rhett and Danica about their experiences, like not just because of the incident, but like you can almost envision yourself like in that moment, like you can put yourself in those shoes and just think about, well, what would I do? And both of those have honestly stuck with me. I think the other one that really, for me personally, was we did the Fit for Flight with Michelle Klein and Vince.
They're great.
About, it's all encompassing as far as the mental health side of it, but also the physical parts of it. I'm definitely not in shape. Well, I mean, round is technically shape, so I guess I am in shape. But like it just kind of further highlights how in this industry, how we some of us, me, don't prioritize ourselves. We spend so much time taking care of other people, and you know, and I shoveling down crap food, you know, or you eat on the run and you're doing back to back. But I really like how they were able to show that in a busy day-to-day world, taking care of family, travel, doing all these things, you just have to take a few steps in that right direction to take care of yourself, can pay dividends in the long run. So I think that was kind of another one that still resonates, you know, with me when, I'll just picture Vince. Like if I'm going to eat that burger, Vince will be like, you really want to eat that? You really want to do that? So
I think it's Michelle you have to be scared of, not Vince.
100%. 100%.
No, I love Michelle and her positivity. She's got so much to offer the community through
every day. The whole time at the conference, she was like, "Oh, I got up at 5 and went for a run, and I worked out." And I'm like, "Oh, I slept in for another hour and a half." just felt so bad about myself, but that's on me. That's on me. I give her such kudos for just the dedication.
Yeah, absolutely.
And just before you go any further, though, Jon, you can't get away with this. You put the three of us on the spot. So what was yours? Your episode, your guest?
Yeah.
Way to call him out, Jack.
Yeah.
Hoping to skate away. So we recorded an episode of the Vertical and Row podcast with a lady named Jamie Wood. And she talked about cognitive brain performance and how to improve that cognitive function. And I feel like everybody in aviation is a high performer, and we're facing a lot of high pressure situations. But how do you give yourself that extra advantage to be in a position to make a good decision? And there's lots of ways to do that. And a lot of it we refer to as what you consider common sense, but it's not, right? Sometimes common sense is so common, it's uncommon. And she just presents this concept in a way that makes sense. And there are actionable things that you can do to improve your cognitive ability. A lot of times people are super philosophical and have these great thoughts and ideas and these well written out concepts, but okay, that's cool, but how do I actually change my life for the better? So she comes up with some really just tangible ways of improving that cognitive performance. So that would be mine. Interesting that, she's not in law enforcement, she's not in aviation, but she brings forward a concept and a way of looking at things that's completely outside the box for me. Again, it's common sense, but it's not.
Yeah, just like Clint, not in law enforcement, not not doing that, not in HAA, not in MRO, but his message affects all of us.
Yeah.
You find that it's cool to find guests like that.
Yeah.
You know?
I will say I got a chance at the Vertical and Row conference in Irving, Texas, to sit down with Clint and Mike Reno and Linda Reno. That particular conversation in that recording, when I think through kind of a pinch me full circle moment, I think back to my early days in aviation, going to the hangar. Vertical magazine was the one thing that was always on the coffee table. You're not in a flight, you're not studying, you better be reading Vertical, and little did I know, 20 years down the road, I'd be sitting at a recording booth with Mike and Linda, who they're not only my bosses, but they're my friends. They're amazing people.
Yeah. And
Clint Pulver, and like, holy cow, this is a pinch me moment. I'm sitting with people I idolize, and I get to talk to them. And I've gotten to this point in life where I'm always trying to surround myself with people that are better than me. That's why I'm here with you guys. And the reason is it makes you a better person. I think if you find yourself in a group of people, if you're what you consider the highest quality person in that group, you should probably find a new group. It drives personal growth and all those things. So that was an add-on to your question. So thanks for throwing me on the bus, Jack. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, Jon. Anything for you, buddy. I will say when I watched that episode with Clint and Linda and Mike, when you brought that up about the magazine being there, that's my experience too. And as a matter of fact, I got to find the picture. There's a picture of our roll call room with the first class airline seats, and there's probably about 8 people in flight suits there. And we set it up because Elon Head was in there doing a story, and we all had Vertical magazines, 8 different magazines, and we all sat there and opened them up, and with the Vertical. And it was just like, oh, this is so good. I mean, but that just shows you there were 8 different magazines and we're all sitting there. That was very typical. It was staged for Elon, but then again, it wasn't, because it was a fixture.
Yeah.
It was a fixture. Yeah.
Yeah. The impact that vertical has on our community is huge, because it's not just print, it's video, it's podcast, like all these different avenues and mediums to promote what our industry is doing. It's been really cool to be a part of the growth of that and a part of their movement. You know, the Vertical Amarillo Conference is just the next logical step in that, you know, impacting the community in a way that hasn't been done before. You know, being a part of that conference, going to a venue that was dedicated for maintainers. Holy cow. Talk about a group who've never had something done just for them, and then seeing
For sure.
this thing, it's made just for them. Wow. And the power of that. I'm excited to see that grow. You know, that is really, really cool. So if your base has maintainers, you know, tell them about this conference. It's a place for them to go and get the education and training and the networking that we find so valuable at Echo. You know, Echo and all the major conferences are really good for flight crews, not as well designed for maintainers for a lot of reasons, right? So this one is particularly developed for the maintainers, and I loved that. That was really cool.
Yeah, I think that's a super awesome concept, and I think that they are a major part of this industry that are oftentimes kind of forgotten about.
Yeah.
And it's not just about, you know, the conference and the job that they do, but even like the mental health side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, if something ever happens, like they are the ones that probably are under the most scrutiny. Going through some of those processes, and what support do we have for them to help them through that?
Right.
And the answer is there isn't any. And we need to change that. We need to fix that. And they truly are, you know, our unsung heroes, and all the props in the world to them, because there is no way at all that I would be able to put a helicopter like that back together with all the parts and pieces and not have more than a few left over
what's this?
at the end of the day.
Hey, we forgot
That doesn't look
something.
important.
What is this? Should I have 6 of these? And I think
Probably
pilots
right.
get a lot of it, you know, too. Like you brought up that really good point, and I think that's why we were really focusing on to not only the mental health and then hearing from the pilot's perspective. They're also the first ones that they're automatically assumed, you know, it's their fault anytime there's an incident, right? You know, just because you're driving it, you know. But our maintainers and pilots, you know, it takes all of us to do this job, and everybody should and will, and at least as far as our mission is to allow, like, everybody should have that equal voice and say so, and sharing these ideas. I mean, I'm not a mechanic, but maybe I can see something that helps, and the mechanic may see something. He's not a medical person, but maybe they see something that they're like, well, I don't really know what that piece of equipment is, but it was making this noise, you know, and maybe you didn't catch it, and maybe it's something they can bring up. You know, I just think it was such a great, you know, part of this process was to highlight all the different voices and aspects to what we do.
Yeah. I think the last point I'll bring up as it relates to maintenance on this recording is talking about the VMRO podcast, the Vertical MRO podcast. That podcast features and focuses on maintainers. We had an interview with Dale Neuenbauer. He's the owner and CEO of a company called HeliLadder. They essentially design ladders that are made to be used to work on helicopters, not the typical A-frame ladders that you see some folks hanging around. They're like legit for helicopter maintenance. But he talks about he started as an AMP. He was working in the aeromedical community. I don't remember which program he was working for, but a really impactful story that he told. Essentially, I'll paraphrase it, and I highly encourage you to go listen to his story, because it really is one of those conversations that, as a maintainer, as a flight ops, it really kind of changes your perspective on things. He talks about a mission that was requested, a flight request came in that they ultimately couldn't grant. And it came down to not having a $5 seal on hand that he needed to finish this maintenance cycle. And so the flight request comes in, and unfortunately had to decline because of maintenance. Lo and behold, the victim in that request was a 5-year-old boy who drowned. He talks about the guilt that was associated with not being able to honor that request or grant that request for flight. he goes home and sees his own 5-year-old boy when he walks through the door, and he just feels crushed, because he could relate to the parents that lost their 5-year-old child. And he's like, I don't know if that flight request would have ultimately resulted in the preservation of life, but this is one of those questions you always ask, right? So he from that moment on, he made a decision that, you know what, I'm going to do everything in my power to have all the things I need on hand to where if a flight request comes in, I'll do my best to make it happen. Not that he didn't do his best before, but it just kind of reframed how he viewed that stuff. So I was going to try and look the episode number up real quick, but I'm out of time. So look that up. Heli Ladder, Vertical MRO Podcast. Just a great conversation. So it's been fun to talk about 2025. I knew that we had a lot to say and pretty deep into the clock on just 2025. But I want to shift gears and talk about 2026, what you guys look forward to and what some of your hopes are based on what happened in 2025. But before we do that, let's talk about some of the exciting trends that are kind of coming our way with technology. The technology is one of my favorite conversations. I think I say that about everything, but technology really, it's exciting to talk about.
It's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
We had a technology panel at the Vertical MRO conference, and it was really interesting to get up and hear people talk about how technology on the maintenance side is really kind of reshaping and enhancing some of the efficiencies that exist within that world. And then I think about on the flight operations side, think about how technology is not only making us more efficient, but safer, so I'll open this question up to all three of you. With technology that is here today and technology that's kind of on the horizon, what is most exciting for you today, and what's most exciting for the stuff that's down the road? And Mike, let's start with you. Technology today that you're like, man, this has been a really good addition to our program.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information. Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
As we bring this Takeover episode to a close, we want to thank Jon Gray and Jack Schonely from the Hangar Z Podcast for stepping into the cockpit and helping us reflect on an incredible first year of the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. Over the past year, we've shared stories that matter, stories about people, purpose, and progress in public safety and air medical aviation. Conversations that challenged our thinking, strengthened our community, and reminded us why this mission is bigger than any one aircraft, role, or organization. As we hover into the next chapter, the focus remains the same: elevating the voices of the crews on the line, exploring the technology shaping tomorrow's operations, and continuing to build a culture rooted in mental wellness, safety, innovation, and connection. Thank you to every listener who's been part of this journey so far. And to those just joining us, welcome aboard. Be sure to like, subscribe, and tune in again next week as the mission continues on the Valor Flight Crew Podcast.